Grant tapped a butter knife against his champagne flute while I was still wiping goat cheese from the quartz island. "To surviving the year, I rebuilt this place," he said. The kitchen filled with laughter and raised glasses. He stood beneath the pendant lights I'd made the electrician lower twice, one hand in his pocket, handsome and relaxed in the way he became when other people were watching. Then he pointed his glass at me. Mara helped too, obviously. She mostly picked colors. His mother laughed so sharply that champagne touched her upper lip. Grant kept going. The open kitchen had been his vision. The original floors had been his gamble. The hidden pantry had been his clever use of dead space. I let him finish. Then Luis Ortega, our contractor, placed a linen-bound book on the island. "Since we're telling the story," he said, "you should have the record." Grant opened it with the pleased expression of a man accepting an award. The first page read, "Project Director and Owner Representative, Mara Ellison." Grant's smile didn't disappear. It simply stopped belonging to his face. For one strange second, all I could hear was the ice maker dropping a tray of cubes. Luis had made the ledger as a housewarming gift. I knew he'd been compiling photographs and receipts, but I hadn't known he planned to bind them. The cover was gray linen, the same soft gray I'd rejected for the dining room because it turned purple at sunset. Grant looked down the page as if another name might appear if he waited. Under mine was a project summary, 11 months, 23 subcontractors, 47 change orders or site decisions, $29,400 saved through renegotiated bids, material substitutions, and vendor credits, one electrical hazard identified before drywall, one structural revision coordinated after demolition exposed a cut joist. Diane leaned close to Grant's shoulder. "Project Director." "That's the person who directed the project," Luis said. His tone was pleasant. Luis could tell someone a wall was collapsing in a voice that made it sound like a weather update. Grant gave a short laugh. "Apparently, I hired a comedian. You hired a contractor." Luis took a sip of club soda. "Mara ran the job. A few people suddenly became fascinated by their drinks. Tom Avery, Grant's supervisor, turned one page and then another. My notes ran along the margins in blue ink. Photographs showed walls open to studs, water damage beneath the old sink, stacks of tile labeled by room. In one picture, I was crouched beside the kitchen wall in rain boots, marking a pipe route with blue painter's tape. Tom looked at me. "You did all this while consulting?" "Not quite all," I said. Luis kept the building standing. Luis smiled. "Most days." That got a laugh, softer than Diane's had been. Grant reached for the ledger. Tom still had one hand on it. "Hold on," he said. "What happened with the electrical hazard?" "The original panel had been modified badly," I said. "We found heat damage after the plaster came off." "She found it," Luis corrected. "Smelled hot insulation." Diane's mouth tightened. "Well, Mara has always been sensitive." Luis looked at her, waiting. It was one of the things I liked about him. He never rushed to fill silence for rude people. Grant finally slid the book away from Tom. "Okay, this is turning into a project debrief. Everybody eat before my wife decides the cheese plate needs a permit." There was enough warmth in his voice to give the room permission to move on. People did. Glasses lifted. Someone asked where we'd found the bar stools. The playlist shifted to something with a heavier bass line, and the kitchen became a party again. But Grant set the ledger face down. I noticed that. I also noticed Diane take his empty flute and refill it without asking, the way she had been doing since he was old enough to hold one. "Beautiful toast," she told him. I carried the crumpled cocktail napkin in my hand all the way to the pantry before I realized I had nowhere to throw it. The trash pullout was in the island. I had put it there because the old bin had blocked the narrow doorway every time someone opened the refrigerator. The hidden pantry was cooler than the kitchen, lined with shallow shelves so nothing could vanish behind anything else. I'd measured every appliance before designing them. The mixer fit with half an inch above it. Grant had called that obsessive until Luis built it, then had begun showing guests his storage trick. I flattened the napkin against my palm. My friend Celia appeared in the doorway holding 2 miniature crab cakes. "Are we murdering him tonight?" she asked. "Or do I need to check my calendar?" I took one of the crab cakes. "You wore suede. You're not dressed for evidence disposal." "I can change." I laughed, which hurt more than I expected. Celia glanced toward the kitchen. "Did you know Luis was bringing that?" "No." "Did Grant know?" "Clearly not." "Good. His face did something I've only seen on malfunctioning printers. I bit into the crab cake and tasted nothing." Celia stopped joking. "Hey, I'm fine. You've alphabetized the crackers. They're arranged by type. Saltines are not a type. Saltines are a warning." I looked at the shelves because looking at her would have been dangerous. "Can you make sure Marcy gets the mushroom ones? She doesn't eat shellfish." "Mara, please." Celia held my gaze for another second, then handed me the second crab cake. "Marcy gets mushrooms. You get to be furious." Before I could answer, Diane called my name from the kitchen. Not called, summoned. She could put 3 syllables into my 2-syllable name when she wanted something. She was standing beside the sink with a wet red ring on the counter. "You don't have coasters out," she said. "For the quartz?" "For the furniture, generally. There are some on the bar cart." I moved those. They didn't match. The coasters had been thick cork, painted along the edges with the dark green left over from our first apartment. Grant and I had made them on the floor one winter night when we couldn't afford the stone set he wanted. The paint had dried unevenly because we kept nudging each other. "Where did you move them?" Diane gestured toward the mudroom without looking. "Somewhere more appropriate." She wiped the ring with the side of her hand. I went into the mudroom. The coasters weren't on the built-in bench or the hooks or the shelf above the washer. I opened the lower cabinet and found them underneath a stack of paper napkins, beside an unopened package of disposable shoe covers. When I straightened, I saw a sliver of blue tape stuck to the cabinet hinge. I had put it there 6 months earlier to flag a door that wouldn't close square. Luis's carpenter had adjusted it the next morning, but the tape had folded behind the hinge and remained. I rubbed the dusty edge with my thumb. During the renovation, blue tape had become my second language. A strip over a crack meant watch it. An arrow meant move this. An X meant do it again. Grant used to tease me about walking through the house with a roll looped around my wrist. "You're tagging it like a crime scene," he'd said once. "Only the crimes." He'd kissed my temple and stolen the tape. That was before he started traveling more, before Diane received her key. When I returned with the coasters, Grant was showing Tom the study. I heard him explaining how he'd insisted on keeping the built-in bookcases. He had wanted them ripped out. I could still see the demolition morning. Grant, in his camel coat, pointing at the shelves and saying they made the room look like a dead professor's office. I had asked Luis to give me one day. By evening, I had found the original 1938 hardware beneath 3 layers of paint and sent Grant reference photographs of restored Georgian built-ins. He'd replied with a thumbs up. Now Tom ran his hand over the dark wood and said, "Smart call." "Some things are worth saving," Grant said. I put a coaster under his glass. His eyes met mine for half a second. "Thank you, sweetheart." Sweetheart was for audiences. In private, I was Mare, pronounced like the animal, a nickname that used to sound tender and lately sounded like an instruction to move. The party thinned after 10. Tom and his wife left with compliments about the house. Luis squeezed my shoulder on his way out. "I didn't mean to start something," he said quietly. "You didn't." He studied my face. "What?" I asked. "The ledger is accurate." "I know. I mean every page." Grant was across the room accepting a bottle of bourbon from a departing colleague. Luis nodded once, then left. Diane stayed. She always stayed after everyone else because she considered cleanup a form of intimacy. She kicked off her heels, found my rubber gloves without asking, and began loading the dishwasher incorrectly. "You can leave the crystal," I said. "I'll wash it tomorrow. It'll spot." "I don't mind." "I do." She turned one flute upside down on the lower rack. I took it out. "It can break from the heat. These are dishwasher safe. They're not. I bought them. And the box said hand wash. Grant walked in carrying empty bottles. Are we fighting about glasses? No, Diane and I said together. He looked between us and smiled faintly, pleased by the symmetry. That nearly did it. I untied my apron. I'm going upstairs. Mara. His smile vanished. Can we not? Can we not what? He glanced at Diane. She put both gloved hands up. I'm invisible. You're wearing yellow rubber gloves in a white kitchen, I said. You're visible from space. Diane peeled off one glove finger by finger. I was trying to help. I know. My voice came out flat enough that she heard what I meant. Grant set the bottles down harder than necessary. Mom, give us a minute. She looked at him, then at me. Her expression softened into concern, which was worse than anger because concern let her stand above you. Of course, she said. I'll just finish in here. Mom. She took her purse from the counter. All right. I know when I'm not wanted. The lie hung there, polished from years of use. Grant followed her to the entry hall. I heard the low murmur of his apology, then the deadbolt sliding after her. Her key was already in her purse. The brass key bowl sat on the console beneath the mirror, half hidden behind a white orchid Diane had brought that afternoon. When Grant returned, I was collecting plates. You embarrassed her. I put 2 plates on top of each other. That's the conversation you want to start with? She stayed to help us clean. She stayed because she was waiting for this. For what? For you to tell me I embarrassed her, so nobody has to mention what you did. He dragged a hand down his face. It was a joke. It was a toast. Oh, come on. You thanked yourself for rebuilding a house you visited on weekends. His head snapped up. I paid for half of it. And I didn't? I'm talking about the renovation. So am I. Grant's nostrils flared. He was careful with anger. He didn't shout. He compressed. I transferred money every month while I was traveling to keep my region from falling apart. And I reduced my billable hours to manage the work here. That was your choice. The sentence landed cleanly between us. On the island, the ledger waited face down beside a bowl of melting ice. I asked, was it? You wanted control of the details. You wouldn't let anything happen without reviewing 6 options. The 6 options existed whether I reviewed them or not. I'm saying you like doing it. You think liking part of the work means it wasn't work? I think you're rewriting the last year because Luis gave you a fancy scrapbook. I stared at him. He stared back, jaw set, but there was something restless behind his eyes. Not guilt, calculation. He was already arranging the evening into a version he could live with. I turned the ledger over. Grant reached for a towel and began wiping the spotless counter. You could have corrected me without making it a whole production. I didn't correct you. You let Luis do it. I didn't know what was on the first page, but you enjoyed it. That surprised me enough to make me laugh once. He threw the towel down. There, that. What? That little look, like you finally caught me. I opened the ledger. My name took up one line in Luis's precise block lettering. I didn't know I was supposed to be trying. Grant folded his arms. You know exactly what I mean. I did, and that was the problem. This wasn't about one joke. It wasn't even about credit. Grant believed marriage was a place where the record could always be softened afterward. His intentions mattered more than his words. His money mattered more than my time. His mother's help counted because it was freely given, while mine disappeared for the same reason. I turned a page. There was the original demolition photograph. On the floor near the old kitchen doorway sat the brass bowl from our first apartment, filled with 2 house keys and a roll of blue tape. Grant leaned against the sink. What do you want me to say? It should have been an easy question. I waited for the answer I had carried through 11 months of dust, invoices, missed work, cold takeout, and decisions he had asked me to handle. I wanted him to know it without being handed the words. When I didn't speak, he exhaled. Fine. I'm sorry, Luis's book made the toast sound unfair. I closed the ledger. That isn't an apology. It's the one I have tonight. He picked up his glass and walked toward the stairs. I remained in the kitchen beneath the lights he said he had chosen. After a moment, the front lock clicked. Diane stood in the entry hall, letting herself back into the house with her key. I forgot my gloves, she said. Her yellow gloves lay in plain sight beside the sink. She looked at the ledger under my hand, then at me. For the first time all evening, she didn't smile. Your gloves are there, I said. Diane glanced at the sink as if they had appeared through an administrative error. So they are. She made no move toward them. Grant had paused halfway up the stairs. I could see one hand curled around the banister. Did you need something else? I asked. Just my gloves. She crossed the kitchen slowly, passing close enough to read the ledger's first page again. Then she picked up the yellow rubber gloves, folded them into her purse, and looked around the counters. What a wonderful evening, she said. Grant must be very proud. He certainly sounded proud. Don't punish him for trying to entertain his guests. I'm not punishing anyone. No? Her gaze dropped to the ledger. That contractor seemed awfully prepared. Luis documented a job. It's what contractors do. Contractors build things. They don't assign medals. Grant came back down 2 steps. Mom, go home. I am going. She touched his sleeve. I hate seeing you two upset after everything you've accomplished. Everything you've accomplished. She said it to him while looking at me. The front door closed behind her. This time, I watched Grant lock it. She came back to see if I'd opened the book, I said. She came back for her gloves. You don't believe that. I don't have the energy to prosecute the case of the forgotten gloves. He went upstairs. I stood beside the brass bowl and listened to his footsteps cross our bedroom. A moment later, the shower started. The ledger remained on the island until morning. Grant was already dressed when I came downstairs. He had made coffee for himself, leaving the empty pot on the warming plate. His suitcase stood by the entry console. I filled the reservoir. I'm in Baltimore until Thursday, he said. I know. My flight's at 9. I know. He watched me measure coffee. Normally, I drove him to the airport. It was 40 minutes each way if traffic cooperated, longer if it didn't. But the ride had become part of our routine. He answered emails. I reminded him what he'd forgotten. We kissed at departures with the efficiency of people who assumed there would always be another return. At 6 that morning, I had opened the airline app and removed myself from the parking reservation. Are you getting dressed? He asked. No. He waited. The car service is saved in your phone, I said. You're serious. I have a client call at 8. You always have a client call. Yes. He slipped his watch on. And I always have a flight. I poured water into the machine. Then it's good you know how to get to the airport. His face went still. So we're doing this. Doing what? Making every normal thing a referendum. I pressed brew. A ride isn't a referendum. It's 40 minutes. 80, actually. He stared at me long enough for the machine to cough out its first dark stream. Then he picked up his suitcase. The wheels bumped the edge of the rug Diane had chosen for the entry and caught there. I'd been straightening that rug twice a day for 3 weeks because the pad underneath was the wrong size. Grant jerked the suitcase loose. I'll get a car, he said. Okay. At the door, he looked back. For half a breath, he seemed less angry than confused. That almost made me offer. Then he said, Mom was right. You are punishing me. The door closed behind him. His suitcase wheels rattled over the front walk. I drank my coffee black because he had used the last of the milk. On Monday afternoon, Diane let herself in while I was presenting a logistics forecast to a client. I heard the alarm chime from my office and then her voice downstairs. Mara? I muted myself. I'm working. I brought soup. Please put it in the refrigerator. She appeared in the office doorway carrying a glass container against her chest. She'd removed her shoes and left them in the entry, which meant she wasn't dropping anything off. Her eyes moved over the monitor, the spreadsheet, the headset around my neck. "I thought you might not be eating." "I'm in a meeting." "Oh, I'll be quiet." She whispered it loudly. I turned back to the screen. "Give me 5 minutes." She disappeared. Cupboard doors opened in the kitchen. Water ran. Something ceramic touched the counter with a heavy clack. When my call ended, I found her ladling soup into one of my white bowls. The glass container was too large to fit in the refrigerator without moving the shelves, so she had reorganized the entire top section. "I said you could put it away," I told her. "I did." "You moved everything." The tall shelf was a waste of space. I returned the mustard, pickles, and jar of capers to their old places. "You can't come in while I'm working." "I didn't know you were working." "My car is outside. The office door was closed. I told you I was working." "You work from home, Mara. How would I know when you're unavailable?" "By calling first." I did call. My phone showed no missed call. She lifted one shoulder. "Perhaps it didn't go through." "Then wait until it does." Her spoon stopped above the bowl. "Grant said you were upset." "This isn't about Grant. Everything is about Grant lately." I looked at her. "It's his housewarming, too." "That's not what I meant." "I know." She put down the ladle. "You've made him feel like a guest in his own house." "Did he say that?" "He didn't have to." The confidence of that answer was almost beautiful. I folded my arms. "I'm changing the keypad code." Diane blinked. "The cleaner has it. Luis has it for warranty visits. You have it. Too many people can walk in." "I don't use the keypad." Grant gave me a key. "Then I'll need the key." Her hand moved toward her purse before she caught it. "Why?" "Because you just walked into my office during a client presentation. I brought you lunch." "I didn't ask for lunch." Kindness doesn't require a request. Access does. The room changed. Diane took one careful breath, then clicked the lid back onto the soup container. "You know, I admired you when Grant brought you home." I waited. "You were so capable. He needed that. He had all these ideas and no structure. You gave him structure." She tucked the container under her arm. "But capable people can become rigid. They start believing that because they know how to do things, they're the only ones entitled to decide." "You mean like deciding which key someone gets to keep?" "I mean like making a marriage feel like employment." She put on her shoes, left the soup bowl on the counter, and walked out with her key still in her purse. I changed the keypad code anyway. Then I opened the spreadsheet where I kept our household schedule. The sheet was color-coded: blue for repairs, green for bills, yellow for family plans, gray for travel. I deleted the reminder to send Diane flowers for her cardiology appointment. The appointment was routine, and Grant knew about it. I removed his dry cleaning pickup, his car inspection, and the deadline for his company reimbursement forms. I canceled the reservation I had made for Diane's birthday dinner. Each deletion felt petty for about 3 seconds. Then it felt accurate. Grant came home Thursday with a crumpled shirt in his carry-on and a bruise-colored shadow beneath his eyes. The keypad rejected me. "I texted you the new code. I was on a plane. The key worked." He dropped his suitcase beside the crooked rug. "Why did you change it?" "Too many people had it." "Meaning my mother?" "Among others." "Did she do something?" "She came into my office during a meeting." "To bring you soup." I laughed softly. "What?" "Nothing." "No, say it." "I'm tired of every boundary turning into a trial where you're her defense attorney." "She's not on trial. She's never on trial. Somehow I am." Grant loosened his tie. "Can we please have one normal night?" The question was so ordinary that I nearly said yes. I wanted a normal night. I wanted him to unpack while I warmed leftovers. I wanted his suitcase open on the bench, his watch in the brass bowl, his body taking up its familiar side of the kitchen. Then he kissed my cheek and said, "Tom and Elise are coming for dinner Saturday." I turned my head. "This Saturday?" It came up after the party. "Tom wants to talk about expanding my territory." "You invited your boss here?" "And Elise. Just 4 of us, nothing huge." What are you cooking? He smiled as if I had made a joke. I thought we'd do that short rib thing. We? His smile faded. I'm not hosting a work dinner for you, I said. It's dinner, Mara. Then make dinner. I don't know how to make short ribs. There are other foods. You're seriously going to sit upstairs while I serve my boss frozen pizza? I have plans with Celia. You hate plans on Saturday night. I made an exception. His jaw tightened. Because you knew about this? I found out 10 seconds ago. Then cancel. No. He gave me a long, measuring look. You want me to fail? No. I want you to notice who has been making it possible for you to succeed. He walked past me into the kitchen. That sounds like something you practiced. I've had a lot of quiet time. Saturday afternoon, Grant came home with 6 grocery bags and a floral arrangement that looked designed for a hotel lobby. He put a 6-pound beef tenderloin on the island. How long does this cook? He asked. I don't know. You absolutely know. I've never cooked one that size. He pulled out his phone. Fine. I went upstairs to get dressed. In the bedroom, my black blouse was missing from the hanger. Grant had taken it to the cleaners with his shirts after I removed the pickup reminder. I found a green dress instead. Downstairs, Grant had put the tenderloin into the oven wrapped in butcher paper. Is that supposed to stay on? I asked. He froze. I continued toward the door. Mara. I looked back. He pulled the pan out and peeled away the paper. Thank you. I asked a question. You knew. Yes. He was almost smiling. For a second, the old rhythm flickered between us. His improvisation, my correction, the relief of being useful to each other. Then his phone rang. Hey, Mom, he answered. No, I think I've got it. I left before I could hear the rest. Celia and I had dinner at a narrow Italian place where the tables were close enough to make every neighboring conversation communal. She listened while I described Grant stabbing the tenderloin with the instant read thermometer in 5 different places. Maybe Tom likes beef-flavored cork, she said. He'll survive. Will Grant? He has wine. That wasn't my question. I tore bread into smaller and smaller pieces. Celia reached across the table and stilled my hand. What outcome are you hoping for? I don't know. That's allowed. I keep thinking he's going to understand if I stop making it easy not to. And if he doesn't? The server arrived with our pasta. I let go of the bread. When I got home, 4 wine glasses sat on the counter. 2 were cloudy from the dishwasher. Grant was scraping hardened sauce from the bottom of a pan. His tie lay over the back of a stool. Diane's silver serving platter was in the sink. How did it go? I asked. Great. I opened the refrigerator. The tenderloin sat on the bottom shelf, nearly untouched. Tom had 2 helpings, Grant said. Good. Mom came by to help. I closed the refrigerator door. She saved dinner, actually. The oven temperature online was wrong. The oven temperature online? You know what I mean. Did you give her the new code? She has a key. I looked toward the entry. The brass bowl held Grant's keys, 2 wine corks, and a folded receipt. No unfamiliar key. She gave it back, he said, reading my face. Happy? Did you ask her to? She offered. She understands. That surprised me. Grant set the pan in the sink. She thinks this whole thing has gotten out of proportion. Of course she does. But she gave it back. I picked up the brass bowl and found a silver key beneath the receipt. Is this hers? Yes. I turned it over. The old green painted tag was attached, the one Grant and I had made to match the coasters. For the first time since the party, something inside me loosened. Grant leaned against the counter. Can we stop keeping score now? I placed the key back in the bowl. We can talk tomorrow. He nodded, cautious but relieved. The next morning, while he showered, I carried the key to the hardware store. I asked them to stamp "Do not duplicate" across the top, though I knew the words weren't legally binding. I wanted the message more than the protection. When I returned, the bowl was gone. In its place sat a polished silver tray engraved with an E. Diane stood in the dining room arranging white roses for a luncheon I knew nothing about. She glanced at the stamped key in my hand. "Oh," she said. "Grant didn't tell you?" "Tell me what?" "That I'm having the committee here." She spread the roses apart with both hands. 12 place settings covered the dining table. My linen napkins had been folded into stiff white fans. On the sideboard sat 2 silver chafing dishes I had never seen before. "What committee?" "The preservation fundraiser. Our usual venue had a pipe burst." She adjusted one flower. "Grant said it would be fine." "Grant is in the shower. He was awake when I asked him." "When did you ask him?" "Last night." While he was telling me, she understood. I set the stamped key on the silver tray. "The luncheon isn't happening here." Diane's hands stopped among the roses. "People are already on their way." "Then call them." "This is my home too, in the sense that my family lives here. That isn't a sense recognized by the locks." She gave me a thin smile. "You mean the locks you're trying to control?" "I mean the house I own." "With your husband?" "Yes, with my husband. Not with you." Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Grant came down barefoot, wearing jeans and fastening his watch. "Mara, can we talk in the kitchen?" "No, tell your mother she can't host 12 people in our house without asking me." "I did ask." "You asked yourself." He lowered his voice. "I knew you'd say no." The honesty stunned me. Diane turned away, trimming a rose stem over my table. "So you knew my answer," I said, "and decided it didn't count." "It's 3 hours. Mom's venue flooded. The usual venue is a restaurant on Ash Street. The private room had a pipe issue. Then the restaurant can put them in the main dining room." They offered. "It would be noisy." Diane placed the rose in the vase. "Some of our members don't hear well in crowded rooms." I looked at Grant. "You told me she returned the key because she understood." "She did return it." "How did she get in?" "I let her in. From upstairs, I had heard the shower running. I pictured Diane arriving before I got home, Grant opening the door, both of them moving my furniture while he waited for me to discover the decision fully formed. "Where is the brass bowl?" Diane's mouth tightened. It didn't work with the entry anymore. "Where is it?" "I put it somewhere safe." Grant rubbed his forehead. "Can we deal with the bowl later?" "No. It's a bowl, Mara." There it was again. A small thing. Made small only after it mattered to me. I walked into the garage. 2 folding tables leaned against the wall beside Grant's golf clubs. Boxes from the renovation still filled the shelves. I found the brass bowl inside one labeled MISC Decor, wrapped in the green coasters and shoved beneath a ceramic dog Diane had given us for Christmas. The bowl was dented along one side. I held it against my ribs and went back inside. A woman in a navy suit stood in the entry hall reaching for the silver tray to drop her keys. She saw my face and hesitated. "Hello," she said. Diane swept forward. "Barbara, you're early." Traffic was merciful. Another car door closed outside. Grant stepped toward me. "We'll talk after." "No. Mara, you have 20 minutes to move this luncheon." His eyes hardened. "I'm not throwing my mother's guests out. I am not hosting them. You don't have to do anything." I looked at the table I would later have to clear. The floors 12 people would cross, the bathroom they would use. The kitchen Diane had already reorganized to suit herself. "You're right," I said. I took my laptop from the office, put the brass bowl on top of it, and left. At Celia's apartment, I sat at the end of her couch while she cleared a stack of fabric samples from the coffee table. She designed hotel interiors and lived in a 1-bedroom full of beautiful objects with nowhere to rest a drink. "You can stay here," she said. "I can't make a decision because of a luncheon." "You wouldn't be. My name is on half that house, and all of you is sitting on my couch." I rubbed the dent in the bowl with my thumb. Celia crouched in front of me. "What did he say when you left?" "We'll talk after." "After what?" after I stopped interfering with the thing he'd already chosen. My phone buzzed. Grant, you made your point. Please come home when you're calmer. I turned the screen face down. Celia read my expression. Romance isn't dead. I stayed through dinner. When I returned, the chafing dishes were gone, but the silver tray remained. Grant sat in the study with the renovation ledger open on his lap. I stopped in the doorway. He looked up. Luis made me sound useless. He documented what happened. I approved every major expense, not every major decision, because I trusted you. You trusted me to work. You didn't trust me enough to credit me. He shut the ledger. How long are you going to keep repeating that? Until you hear it. I hear it. I disagree with your interpretation. I almost admired the efficiency of that. Where's your mother's key? I asked. On the tray. I'm having the locks rekeyed tomorrow. His eyebrows rose. You can't lock me out of my own house. You'll get a key. And Mom? No. You don't get to decide that unilaterally. Neither did you. He stood. She had to move a lunch. You acted like she broke in and burned the place down. She used the house after I said no. I said yes. And that was enough for both of us? He looked at the ledger as if it had introduced this new arithmetic into our marriage. I took the stamped key upstairs. The locksmith came while Grant was at work. I changed the front, side, and mudroom locks, then gave Grant 2 new keys in a sealed envelope. I kept the keypad code private except for the cleaner's temporary access window. For 4 days, the house was quiet. Then I came home from a client meeting and found Diane's camel coat hanging in the entry. She was in the kitchen drinking coffee from my mug. A new brass key lay beside her purse. Grant stood at the sink, rinsing an apple. He saw me looking. I gave her one. Something in me stopped straining. Diane picked up the key. For emergencies. I nodded. Grant put the apple on a towel. Say whatever you're going to say. I don't have anything left to say. That unsettled him more than anger would have. I went upstairs, took my suitcase from the closet, and began packing. Grant followed me. What are you doing? Leaving. For how long? I don't know yet. He leaned against the bedroom door, blocking nothing and somehow making the room feel smaller. This is insane. I folded 2 sweaters. You can't walk out over a key. I'm not. Then what are you walking out over? I looked at him. He truly wanted an answer he could reduce. The fact that I told you what the key meant, and you gave it back to her anyway. She's my mother. I'm your wife. That's not a competition. No, it shouldn't have been. He paced once to the window and back. What do you expect me to do? Tell her she's unwelcome forever? I expected you to tell her access to our house required both of us to agree. She's helped us constantly. She helped herself constantly. That's cruel. I zipped the suitcase. His anger slipped. Mare. The nickname found the old soft place and pressed. I sat on the edge of the bed because my legs had begun to shake. He crouched in front of me, close enough that I could smell the apple on his breath. Stay tonight, he said. We'll talk. I'll take the key back. You already took it back once. I mean it now. You meant whatever kept me here. His hands closed around mine. Isn't staying what we're supposed to be trying to do? For one terrible moment, I wanted to let effort count as love. I wanted him to take the suitcase from me and put my sweaters back badly. I wanted to return to the version of us that made coasters on the floor. Then Diane called from downstairs. Grant? Where do you keep the decaf? His eyes closed. I pulled my hands away. The furnished apartment Celia found smelled faintly of someone else's vanilla candles. The sofa was beige, the plates were square, and every cabinet closed too loudly. I put the brass bowl beside the door. My single key looked lonely in it, so I dropped in the roll of blue tape from my work bag. Grant texted for 3 days, alternating between anger and logistics. The electric bill posted, "Your mail is here." Mom returned the key. I'm sorry you feel pushed out. That last message kept me awake longer than the others. Work helped until it didn't. I accepted a consulting contract I had previously turned down because it required long days on site at a distribution center across town. The money covered the apartment and my share of the house expenses. But by the second week, I was eating vending machine almonds for dinner and waking at 4 with supply routes running through my head. Grant noticed the strain and mistook it for surrender. He brought takeout to the apartment one Thursday. I let him up because the smell of Thai basil reached me through the intercom. He stood inside the door, looking at the beige sofa and the brass bowl. "This place isn't you," he said. "It came furnished. You hate square plates. I contain multitudes." He smiled. I did too. We ate from cartons on the floor because the apartment had only 2 dining chairs and one of them wobbled. It was dangerously familiar. Grant told me Tom had praised the dinner despite the tenderloin. I told him Diane had saved him. "Mom was impressed you let me handle it," he said. "I wasn't aware I had to let you." "You know what I mean." "I do. That's usually where we get in trouble." The smile left his face. He put down his fork. "Come home." "What changes if I do?" "You can change the keypad again." "That isn't what I asked. I'll talk to Mom about boundaries." "You've talked to her before." "Then tell me what you want." "I want the house sold, or I want one of us to buy out the other." His carton tipped in his hand. Sauce ran onto his thumb. "You're talking about selling our house." "Yes." "Because my mother had a lunch?" I reached for a napkin and stopped myself. He wiped his hand on the edge of the takeout bag. "I can't believe you." "That makes 2 of us." He left the food on the floor. The next morning, I emailed the names of 3 mediators. Grant replied that he would not discuss selling until I came home and participated in fixing the marriage. I chose a mediator anyway. 2 weeks later, Luis called while I was standing beneath fluorescent lights at the distribution center. "I need your signature," he said. "For what?" "Plumbing revision in the study." I stepped away from the conveyor noise. There shouldn't be plumbing in the study. "There is if it's becoming a bedroom suite." My grip tightened on the phone. "Whose bedroom suite?" Luis went quiet. Then he said, "I'm sending you the proposed change order." The plans arrived before he hung up. The built-in bookcases were marked for partial demolition. A bathroom had been drawn across the wall where the old water lines turned toward the kitchen. At the bottom, under Requested By, was Diane Ellison's name. Grant's approval sat beside it. Below both was an empty line labeled Co-Owner Authorization, Mara Ellison. A second email came from Luis with photographs. Blue painter's tape marked the floor, the wall, and the cabinet where the pipe route would have to change. His message contained one sentence: "I will not touch this room without your name." I stared at that sentence until the conveyor alarm behind me began to pulse. I typed, "Do not proceed. I do not authorize any work." Luis replied immediately, "Understood." Then, after a pause, "You should come see it." I drove to the house at 6. The new key still worked. That surprised me enough that I stood in the entry with my hand on the lock, listening. The brass bowl was gone. The silver tray held Grant's keys, Diane's sunglasses, and 3 fabric swatches in shades of beige. A contractor's brochure lay open beside them. Voices came from the study. Diane stood where Grant's desk had been, holding a tape measure against the wall. Grant was kneeling beside an exposed strip of baseboard. The furniture had been pushed into the hall. Plastic sheeting covered the built-ins, and blue tape outlined a rectangle on the floor, large enough for a bathroom. Luis stood by the window with his arms folded. Diane lowered the tape measure. "Why is she here?" "I asked her to come," Luis said. Grant rose. "You didn't answer my calls." "I was working." "So was I." I looked at the plastic-covered bookcases. "You approved this." "We were exploring options. You signed a change order. It isn't final until you sign." "Then why is the room torn apart?" Diane rolled up the tape measure with a snap. "Nothing is torn apart. We needed to see the wall." "Who is we?" She and Grant exchanged a look. Luis answered. "A plumbing subcontractor opened the baseboard before he realized the request didn't come through me. That's when he called. Diane's chin lifted. He has done work for several people I know. And he was about to cut into a line beneath the restored floor, Louise said, which would void my warranty on that section. Grant glanced down at the exposed wood as if the floor had betrayed him by being complicated. I picked up one of the plans. Why do you need a shower in the study? Diane smoothed the front of her blouse. It would add value. To whose life? Mara, Grant warned. No, I'd like to hear her answer. Diane looked toward the bay window. I thought it might be convenient for me to stay occasionally. The stairs in my townhouse are becoming tiresome. You said this was a temporary guest room, Grant said. It would be a guest room. With your furniture listed on the plan. She took the paper from my hand. In the bedroom area, someone had written Diane's armoire in neat block letters. That was to confirm dimensions. Grant stared at it. I looked at him. How much did you approve? We don't need to do this in front of Louise. Louise pushed away from the window. I'll be outside. No, I said. Please stay. This concerns your work. Diane's eyes sharpened. He's a contractor, not a marriage counselor. He's the contractor whose warranty you almost voided. Louise stayed. Grant named a number almost $12,000 above the preliminary estimate attached to the plans. What happened to the vendor rates? I asked. Apparently, those were tied to the full renovation, he said. They were tied to scheduling, volume, and relationships. I know that now. Diane crossed her arms. It is still a very reasonable investment. Are you paying for it? I offered to contribute. How much? That is between Grant and me. Grant rubbed the back of his neck. I understood before either of them spoke. You expected her to pay for most of it, I said. I expected we'd discuss it. Diane's face changed. I said I could help with furnishings. You said you wanted a place here, Grant told her. I said it would be reassuring to have options. Louise studied the blue tape on the floor. Grant turned on me. This is exactly why I wanted to talk before you came over. Now everyone is performing. I came because work was about to be done to a house I still own, and you made your position clear. Good. I signed the change order in the box marked declined and dated it. Diane gave a small, disbelieving laugh. You're willing to hurt the resale value out of spite. The original study is one of the house's best rooms, according to you. According to the ledger, Louise said. Grant shut his eyes. Diane collected her tape measure and fabric swatches. I'm not staying for another staged humiliation. She left her sunglasses on the silver tray. Grant waited until the front door closed. You could have handled that privately. I tried private. Private is where you agree with me until she asks again. She caught me at a bad time. She drew a bathroom. She's lonely. So you gave her part of our house. You left me in it. The words reached me before he could soften them. Louise looked toward the door. I'll send a closeout invoice for the exploratory work. Send it to me, Grant said. Louise nodded. As he passed me, he tapped 2 fingers against the plastic over the bookcase. No permanent damage. It was a gift, that sentence. A small thing saved. After he left, Grant peeled a strip of blue tape from the floor and wound it around his fingers. I can't maintain this place by myself, he said. You've been here alone for less than a month. I travel. The yard needs work. There's always a delivery or a filter or some person asking for a decision. Yes. You don't have to look so satisfied. I'm not satisfied. You wanted me to notice. I noticed. That isn't the same as understanding. What's the difference? Noticing is knowing the filters get changed. Understanding is knowing someone has been remembering them for you. He pulled the tape tighter until his fingertip darkened, then ripped it off. Come home, he said. Help me finish this room. We can make it whatever you want. The offer was so wrong that I felt my last uncertainty settle. You're asking me to manage the project that replaces your mother's access with a better version of it. I'm asking my wife to participate in her own house. I did. His gaze moved toward the plastic-covered shelves. I participated so completely, you thought the house happened around you. I picked up my copy of the declined order and left. The mediator's office occupied the second floor of a converted row house and smelled like coffee that had been sitting since morning. Grant arrived 7 minutes late with the renovation ledger tucked under his arm. He set it between us. "I brought evidence," he said. The mediator, a patient woman named Helen Park, adjusted her glasses. "Evidence of what?" "That the spending was joint." "I haven't disputed that," I said. Grant looked annoyed by my agreement. Helen led us through the same columns 3 times: mortgage balance, renovation loan, cash contributions, current valuation, projected selling costs. My apartment and consulting income did not change the house math. Grant could not refinance enough to buy out my share without a large additional contribution. I could qualify more easily, but only by abandoning the financial stability I had rebuilt and taking responsibility for a house I no longer wanted. Grant pushed his chair back. "This is premature." "We've been separated for 6 weeks," I said. "That is not a geological era." "It was long enough to plan a bathroom." He glanced at Helen. "Can we keep the commentary useful?" Helen folded her hands. "Do you have a proposed source for the buyout funds?" "My mother may help." "Has she committed to an amount?" "She will." Diane did not. Grant called me 2 days later while I was eating almonds in the distribution center parking lot. "She says her money is tied up." "I'm sorry." "You don't sound sorry." "I'm sorry you counted it before asking." "She offered to contribute." "To furnishings. She wanted that suite. She wanted you to want her there." He was silent. That was crueler than I intended, and truer than I wanted it to be. "She thinks selling would be sensible," he said. "Then we agree." "No. She thinks I should sell because the house is too much for me." I leaned my head against the seat. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think you both get to withdraw whenever the arrangement stops flattering you." I sat upright. "You think I left because I wasn't flattered?" "I think the ledger gave you a version of yourself you liked better than being my wife." My hand tightened around the phone. The ledger recorded what I did. "And now it's the only version that counts." "No, it's the version you denied in front of everyone. You act like I erased you from history. You erased me from a room I built while I was standing in it. A truck backed into the loading bay, its warning signal beating through the glass." Grant's voice dropped. "I don't want to sell." "I know. I don't want this to be the end." "I know that too." "Then stop saying it like it changes nothing. It changes everything. It just doesn't change my decision." I instructed Helen to prepare the next step toward forcing a sale if Grant would not agree voluntarily. The process was slower and uglier than saying the words. There were forms, estimates, another appraisal, and fees that made both of us flinch. Each delay gave Grant room to believe exhaustion would send me home. It nearly did. My contract expanded without increasing the staff. I spent 14 hours one Tuesday correcting a routing plan someone else had approved, then returned to the apartment and found water spreading from beneath the kitchen sink. The emergency maintenance number went to voicemail. I sat on the floor with every towel I owned pressed against the cabinet and cried with my back against a dishwasher I hated. Grant would have come if I called. For 10 minutes, I held my phone. Then I saw the roll of blue tape in the brass bowl. I tore off a strip, marked the leaking connection, and shut off the valve beneath the sink. The maintenance technician arrived the next morning and fixed it in 12 minutes. Not every problem required a marriage. Some problems only required knowing where the water stopped. Grant finally agreed to list the house, but the first offer came in low. He rejected it without consulting me. The second buyer wanted a credit for the unfinished study wall. Grant blamed my refusal to complete the suite. I paid half the repair cost to restore the baseboard, and Luis finished it in an afternoon. When I met him at the house, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photograph of the study after restoration. The built-ins glowed against the dark green walls. No blue tape, no plastic. "For the ledger," he said. "Grant has it." "I know." Luis hesitated. "He's reading it now." The final property meeting happened in that study. Helen attended by video on Grant's laptop. Our realtor sat near the window with a revised offer from the first buyers, now closer to the appraisal. Diane occupied the leather chair by the fireplace, invited by Grant because she had suggested helping with the buyout one final time. The ledger lay open on the desk. Grant looked as if he had not slept. Diane examined the offer. "I still think you're rushing. If you wait until spring—" "The carrying costs erase the difference," I said. "You don't know what the market will do." "Neither do you." She looked at Grant. "I can help with the mortgage for a few months." "How much?" he asked. Her lips parted. He held her gaze. "An actual number, Mom." She lowered the offer. "I don't see why I'm being interrogated." "You wanted a suite. I wanted to support you. You ordered fabric for a possibility. You told me the townhouse stairs were becoming a problem." "They are inconvenient. That doesn't mean I intended to move in permanently." Grant leaned back as if she had pushed him. Diane's expression softened. "You were alone. You needed a project. I was trying to give you something to look forward to." He looked down at the ledger. His fingers rested on a yellowed page near the front. "I recognized our original renovation budget, made before demolition, when we still believed the worst decision we'd face was whether to keep a wall." Grant turned the ledger toward me. Beside project responsibilities, in his handwriting, were the words, "Mara leads." I trust her eye. I remembered him writing it at our old kitchen table. He'd been eating cold noodles from the carton, teasing me because I wanted responsibilities listed in advance. "You wrote everything down," he said. "I had to." "No, I mean everything." He turned pages. My note about the window delay included the date he had called the supplier from an airport and gotten the regional manager involved. A photograph of the damaged joist showed Grant holding a work light while Luis measured. On the pantry page, I had written Grant's idea: shallow shelf at eye level for coffee. The ledger had not erased him. It had placed him accurately. He looked at the realtor. "Give us 5 minutes." Diane stood. "Grant, please." She picked up her purse and left without touching him. The realtor followed her into the hall. Helen muted herself on the laptop. Grant and I remained in the study. He closed the ledger and said, "I remembered writing that. I waited. I just didn't remember meaning it. That's worse." "I know." He looked around the room. "Do you remember the first time we saw this house? You stood right there and said the windows made it feel like it was breathing." "I remember. We were happy. We were hopeful. Is that different?" "Now it is." He rubbed his thumb over the linen cover. "What if I sign the boundary agreement Helen suggested? No keys for Mom. No changes without both signatures. We go back to counseling. What happens the next time she needs you?" I say no, and resent me for making you. I could learn not to. I believed he meant it. That was the difficult part. I set the brass bowl on the desk beside the ledger. Its dent caught the window light. "This house meant partnership to me," I said. "Every order, every repair, every strip of tape. I thought we were building something together." "We were." "I was building, Grant. You were benefiting. And when people came to see it, you needed them to believe you'd done it alone." His face tightened. "I was showing off." "You were telling the truth as you understood it. That isn't fair. It's why I can't come back." He looked at the bowl. "I loved that thing. You let her put it in a box. I didn't know. You didn't ask where it went." He flinched. "I don't need you to know where every bowl is," I said. "I need a life where my belonging doesn't depend on how useful I am." He pressed both palms to the desk. "What happens to us after I sign?" "We sell the house." "That isn't what I asked." "I know." He stared out the window for a long time. Then he opened the study door and told the realtor to bring in the offer. Grant signed first. My hand shook when I signed beneath him. 3 months later, one key rested in the brass bowl by my apartment door. I had replaced the square plates but kept the beige sofa, which looked better under the green blanket Celia gave me. The ledger's first page hung on the wall above my desk. I had not framed Grant's failure. I had framed the record. One corner sat slightly crooked. I tore a narrow strip of blue painter's tape, marked the place where the nail needed to move, and stepped back. My name held level in the morning light.